There's a plant growing quietly in backyards across the world right now, small and unassuming, with leaves so ordinary you'd walk past it without a second glance. But inside those leaves is a compound so powerful at rebuilding pancreatic tissue that 3 major pharmaceutical companies tried to synthesize it, failed, and then worked quietly to make sure you never heard its real name. This isn't conspiracy, this is documented medical suppression. And what I'm about to tell you has been buried in research journals for over 2 decades, while millions of people were told their pancreas was dying and there was nothing they could do about it. But before we go any further, I need to know something. How far did this video reach you? Drop your name and city in the comments right now. Hit that like button, subscribe to this channel, because what you're about to hear almost never makes it past the algorithm, and I need to know this information is actually getting to the people who need it most. I'm not here to sell you a miracle. I'm here to show you something that's been hidden in plain sight, something that was working beautifully until it threatened the wrong profit margins. Because here's what nobody tells you about type 2 diabetes and blood sugar issues. Your pancreas isn't broken beyond repair. It's suffocating. And there's a specific botanical compound that acts like pure oxygen to those dying beta cells, the ones you were told were gone forever. Thousands of people are already using a formula that combines natural compounds in a very specific way to support this exact process. It's not a drug. It's not experimental. And the results are showing up in glucose monitors and lab reports across the country. You'll find all the details in the pinned comment below. I'm leaving it there because I don't know how long this information will stay up. What I'm sharing today goes against everything the pharmaceutical model wants you to believe about your pancreas, about your insulin production, about what's actually possible when your body gets what it's been screaming for. Let me take you back to where this story really begins. 1998. A research team at the Universidad Nacional Autónoma de Mexico published findings that should have changed diabetes treatment forever. They were studying a plant that indigenous communities had used for generations, a plant so common it was considered a weed in most places. What they found inside that plant was a class of compounds called cucurbitaceans, and these compounds were doing something that modern medicine insisted was impossible. They were stimulating pancreatic beta cell regeneration, not supporting existing cells, not slowing decline, regenerating, growing new insulin-producing cells where there were none before. The study was small, but the results were undeniable. Fasting glucose dropped by an average of 43 points in 90 days. Insulin sensitivity improved by measurable margins. And when they biopsied pancreatic tissue, they found new beta cell clusters forming in areas that had been dormant for years. The research was published, it was peer-reviewed, and then it disappeared. Not literally, but practically. No follow-up funding, no large-scale trials, no pharmaceutical interest. Because you can't patent a plant that grows wild in vacant lots. You can't charge $400 a month for something people can grow in a pot on their windowsill. So it got buried under newer, shinier research. Research funded by companies that profit when your pancreas stays damaged, when you need their medications every single day for the rest of your life. But here's where the story gets interesting. A handful of researchers refused to let it go. They kept studying this plant in small independent labs, publishing in journals that don't get much attention, documenting case after case of people whose pancreatic function returned after decades of decline. And what they discovered about how this compound works is where everything starts to make sense. Your pancreas has 2 main jobs. 1, produce digestive enzymes. 2, produce insulin from specialized beta cells in clusters called islets of Langerhans. When you develop insulin resistance, those beta cells go into overdrive trying to keep up with demand. They pump out insulin constantly, far beyond their design capacity, and eventually they burn out. They die. They get replaced by scar tissue. And once they're gone, conventional medicine says they're gone for good. That's the story you've been told. That's the story that keeps you dependent on medication. But it's not the whole truth. Because your pancreas, even when it's damaged, even when 60 or 70% of those beta cells are dead, still has something called pancreatic progenitor cells. Think of them as stem cells specific to the pancreas. They're dormant. They're waiting. They have the ability to become new beta cells if the right signal comes through. But in the inflammatory, high-glucose, oxidative stress environment of chronic diabetes, that signal never comes. The environment is too hostile. The progenitor cells stay dormant, and your insulin production stays flatlined or continues declining year after year. This is where cucurbitacins change everything. These compounds don't work like drugs that force a temporary reaction. They work by changing the internal environment of the pancreas itself. First, they reduce the chronic inflammation that's been suffocating those progenitor cells. Second, they lower oxidative stress, which is the internal rust that damages cell membranes and DNA. Third, and this is the part that made pharmaceutical researchers panic, they activate specific genetic pathways that tell progenitor cells to wake up and differentiate into functioning beta cells. It's not speculation. This has been observed under microscopy, measured in insulin output, documented in peer-reviewed studies that just never made it to mainstream awareness. And the plant I'm talking about isn't some rare Amazonian root that costs $200 a bottle. It's something that's been growing in backyards, empty lots, and garden edges for centuries. It's bitter melon, Momordica carrantia, a warty, green, cucumber-like vegetable that most people find too bitter to eat and throw away without a second thought. But that bitterness, that's the cucurbitacin content. That's the medicine. And it's been there all along. Now, I need to pause here because I know what you're thinking. If this is real, if this actually works, why hasn't my doctor mentioned it? Why isn't this on the news? Why isn't this the standard treatment? And the answer is as simple as it is infuriating. There's no profit in it. Bitter melon can't be patented. Cucurbitacins in their natural form can't be monopolized. If this became standard treatment, it would collapse a multi-billion-dollar industry built entirely on managing your symptoms while keeping you sick. Metformin brings in $3 billion a year. Insulin brings in over $27 billion. The entire diabetes drug market is worth close to $60 billion annually. What happens to those numbers if people's pancreases start functioning again, if insulin sensitivity returns, if blood sugar stabilizes without prescriptions? The system doesn't want you well, it wants you manageable. And bitter melon, cheap, accessible, effective, is a direct threat to that model. So it gets dismissed as folk medicine, it gets ignored in medical school curriculum, it gets buried under studies funded by the companies that profit from your continued dependence. But while the pharmaceutical complex worked to keep this quiet, real people were using it, and they were getting results that no one could explain away. I want to tell you about Maria, 61 years old, diagnosed with type 2 diabetes 9 years ago, started on metformin, added glipizide 2 years later, then insulin 3 years after that. Her fasting glucose hadn't been under 160 in over a year. Her A1C was stuck at 8.4. She was tired all the time. Her vision was getting worse. She had numbness in her feet, and her doctor kept saying the same thing. This is just how diabetes progresses. We'll keep adjusting your medications. Then she found information about bitter melon from a cousin in another country where this plant is still used traditionally. She was skeptical, but desperate. She started taking a concentrated extract, not the raw vegetable, because the amount you'd need to eat would be impossible. A concentrated form with standardized cucurbitacin content. Within 3 weeks, her fasting glucose dropped to 142. By week 6, it was 128. At 90 days, she was at 112. Her A1C came down to 7.1, then 6.7. The numbness in her feet started fading, her energy came back, and her endocrinologist, looking at her labs, couldn't explain it. She hadn't changed her medications, she hadn't started exercising more. The only variable was the bitter melon extract, and when she told her doctor what she was taking, he waved it off. Coincidence. Diabetes doesn't reverse. But Maria's pancreas didn't get the memo. Because it wasn't reversing, it was regenerating. And Maria isn't alone. There are thousands of people whose glucose monitors and lab reports tell the same story. People who were told they'd be on insulin forever. People whose doctors said their beta cells were dead and gone. People who are now producing their own insulin again because someone gave their pancreas what it actually needed instead of just drugging the symptoms. But here's what you need to understand. This doesn't work overnight. It's not a quick fix. It's a biological process. Regeneration takes time. It takes consistency. And it requires the right form and dosage. Because raw, bitter melon, the kind you'd find in an Asian grocery store, contains cucurbitacins. Yes, but the concentration is too low. You'd need to eat massive amounts daily, and the bitterness is so intense most people can't tolerate it. Plus, there are compounds in the raw form that can cause digestive upset if you consume too much. What works, what's actually being used by people getting results, is a concentrated extract standardized for cucurbitacin content. Combined with specific cofactors like chromium, alpha-lipoic acid, and berberine that work synergistically with the bitter melon to maximize insulin sensitivity and support beta cell function. It's not a single ingredient, it's a formulation, and that formulation is exactly what thousands of people are using right now. The same one I mentioned at the beginning, the one that's available in the pinned comment below, because I need you to understand something. I can give you all the information in the world. I can show you the studies, the mechanisms, the testimonials. But information without application is just entertainment. If you're serious about this, if you want to give your pancreas a real chance, that formula is where you start. It's there, it's accessible. And it works with your body's natural regenerative capacity instead of against it. Now let's go deeper into why your pancreas stopped working in the first place, because understanding the root cause is what prevents this from happening again. You didn't develop diabetes because your pancreas was weak. You developed it because your lifestyle, your diet, and your stress levels created an environment where your pancreas couldn't survive. Every time you eat refined carbohydrates, white bread, white rice, pastries, sugary drinks, your blood sugar spikes violently. Your pancreas sees that spike and floods your bloodstream with insulin to bring it back down. This happens multiple times a day, every day, for years. And each time, those beta cells work harder. They produce more insulin. They try to compensate. But over time, your cells become resistant to that insulin. They stop responding. So your pancreas has to produce even more to get the same effect. It's like screaming louder and louder at someone who's slowly going deaf. Eventually, you lose your voice. Eventually, those beta cells burn out. They die. They can't keep up. And that's when you get the diagnosis: type 2 diabetes, failed pancreas, lifelong medication. But here's what they don't tell you. That process, that burnout, it's reversible. If you remove the constant assault of refined carbs, if you lower the inflammatory load, if you reduce the oxidative stress, if you support the pancreas with compounds that help it heal instead of just masking the symptoms, those progenitor cells wake up. New beta cells form. Insulin production returns, not to teenage levels, but to functional levels. Levels where you're not dependent on external insulin, levels where your glucose stays stable without constant medication, and bitter melon is the key that unlocks that process. But it works best, it works fastest, when you also address the lifestyle factors that broke your pancreas in the first place. That means cutting out refined sugars and white flour completely, not reducing them, eliminating them. Because every time you spike your blood sugar, you're telling your pancreas to work harder. And you're undoing the regeneration process. That means eating protein and healthy fats with every meal. Because protein and fats slow down glucose absorption. They prevent spikes. They give your pancreas a chance to rest and repair. That means walking after meals. Just 15 or 20 minutes. Because movement pulls glucose out of your bloodstream and into your muscles without requiring insulin. It takes pressure off your pancreas immediately. That means managing stress, because chronic stress keeps cortisol elevated, and elevated cortisol raises blood sugar and makes your cells more insulin resistant, everything working against your pancreas. That means sleeping 7 to 8 hours a night, because sleep deprivation disrupts insulin sensitivity within 24 hours. One bad night makes your cells less responsive to insulin. Chronic poor sleep guarantees continued decline. These aren't optional, they're the foundation. Bitter melon accelerates pancreatic regeneration. But if you keep poisoning the environment with sugar, stress, and sleep deprivation, you're trying to grow a garden in toxic soil. It won't work. The combination, that's where the transformation happens. The bitter melon extract gives your pancreas the biological tools to rebuild. The lifestyle changes create the environment where that rebuilding can actually succeed. And when those two come together, that's when glucose numbers drop. That's when energy returns. That's when the tingling in your feet fades. That's when you stop feeling like diabetes is a life sentence. I want to be very clear about something. I'm not saying throw away your medications. I'm not saying stop seeing your doctor. What I'm saying is that you have more control over this than you've been led to believe. You've been told your pancreas is dying, and there's nothing you can do but manage the decline. That's a lie, a profitable lie, but a lie nonetheless. Your pancreas has regenerative potential. It's sitting there right now, waiting for the right conditions. And bitter melon, specifically the cucurbitacin compounds it contains, creates those conditions. This isn't alternative medicine. This isn't pseudoscience. This is documented botanical pharmacology that's been sidelined because it threatens the business model of chronic disease management. And I'm telling you this because you deserve to know. You deserve to know that regeneration is possible, that your beta cells aren't gone forever, that your body, given the right support, can heal itself in ways your doctor never mentioned. The formula that combines bitter melon extract with the cofactors that maximize its effectiveness, that's in the pinned comment. It's there because people are getting real results, lab-verified results. And if you're serious about giving your pancreas a chance, that's where you start. Let me leave you with this. You're not broken. You're not hopeless. You're not at the mercy of a failing organ. You're dealing with a system that profits from keeping you sick, and that system has hidden solutions that work because those solutions threaten revenue. Bitter melon is one of those solutions. Cucurbitacins are real. Pancreatic regeneration is real. And the evidence is sitting in glucose monitors and A1C reports of thousands of people who refused to accept that decline was inevitable. If this video reached you, if you made it this far, that's not an accident. That's your body telling you it's ready for something different. So listen to it. Hit that subscribe button because this channel exists to bring you information that the medical industrial complex doesn't want widespread. Drop a comment. Tell me where you're watching from. Let me know if this resonated. And check that pinned comment. Because the formula that's working for thousands of people, the one that combines bitter melon extract with the exact cofactors your pancreas needs, it's right there. Your pancreas isn't dead, it's dormant, and it's time to wake it up.